Well, there's one person that's just ignoring the rules as always.
Right.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll call the meeting to order. First order of business is pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so this is scheduled as a special meeting, so we don't have much on the agenda in regards to the normal course of business, no minutes, votes, counts, and such.
Excuse me, could you speak up a little bit?
Use the mic.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, this is a special meeting to discuss primarily some budget work that we need to do. So we don't have a lot of other things on the agenda, so I will skip down to where we do. And I guess first up would be the superintendent's report.
Thought it'd be important to update the board. And those of you who are here in the audience this evening, thank you for coming. Update the board on some of the most recent developments in terms of the federal CDC. And the announcement that they made last week, late last week, I believe it was Friday afternoon, in regards to what the federal CDC is recommending in terms of guidance for this pandemic. Before we do that, I think I need to offer an explanation, because I'm not sure everybody fully understands why we're waiting right now for the main guidance of the CDC. Let me offer that explanation, please. When this all started 2 years ago, all school districts, public school districts in the state of Maine, needed to submit a plan to the Maine Department of Education. In that plan, you needed to indicate how you were going to monitor safety in your school. So if your plan needed to include some type of following the science behind what it was that you were doing. Most school districts, as we did, said that we would follow the MDOE guidelines, which includes the main CDCs, all encompassed, and the federal guidelines as well. So it's a two-part piece. Why is that? Because often the federal guidelines give broad strokes for the entire country. Then the individual states look at what does this mean to them? How might it be a little bit different for an individual state or not? Last Friday, during vacation, the federal guidelines came out. The Maine CDC did not have an opportunity to weigh in on those federal guidelines in terms of what does it mean to Maine. Maine weighs in on the federal guidelines, and as I just said, either accepts them or they recommend tweaks to them as it pertains to us. We have been told that the Maine CDC is going to release those guidelines this week. One of the misnomers that I'm hearing is that Winslow is the only school department that has not dropped the mask as a result of the most recent CDC announcement. I would like to clarify that that is not true. I can tell you that you have community schools right around us that have gone to school today, and they're doing exactly what we're doing because their plan was written the way that our plan was written. That's, we look at the guidance of the Maine CDC. So communities around us, I can tell you that Skowhegan is doing exactly what we're doing. I can tell you that Lawrence, SAD 49 is doing exactly what we're doing. I can tell you that Waterville is doing what we're doing. Other communities as well. But here's the piece. Most of these communities, including us, we have another special meeting next Monday. Most of these communities are all anxiously waiting to see what's going to happen this week with the Maine CDC. Because they want to react next Monday, review the recommendations, take action. Now, it could very well be that the Maine CDC says, you know what? We accept the federal guidance. That's it. It could also very well be that the Maine CDC says, we need to look at how this is going to affect your standard operating procedure in Maine. How will it affect capacity? If masks are optional, how does it impact capacity? During basketball season, we did not allow visitors from other communities, only our Winslow residents. How does it affect transportation? Right now, this conversation is about dropping the mask in transportation. If you're in one of these communities that is at a minimum of medium risk. Well, think about that one just for a second. The federal guidance, federal CDC makes this broad sweep and says, transportation, you can drop your mask or it could be optional. In Florida, right now, that might not be a problem. Because it's 80 degrees, the windows are down, plenty of air circulating on the bus, it might not be a problem. In Maine, it might be a problem. If it's 5 degrees, kids are on a bus for 20 minutes, it might be a problem. So those are the types of things that are pertinent from state to state that we would get that information from the Maine CDC in order to move forward. That's the gist of it right now. Watching emails today to see if anything has been released. We haven't heard anything yet. We know that they're working on it. I've made calls to the Department of Education saying, when can we expect this? We're working on it. I know it's frustrating, but I can guarantee you that we're not holding anything back. We're simply abiding by the policies that we put in place at the beginning of this. Does the board have any questions?
Questions
I think if we receive the information this week, we've said to the board is that we will convene as quickly as possible to discuss and take action and move forward.
Okay. So, no questions for Peter. We will move on to the public comment section. Have an introduction for that, for those who might not.
Can't hear you, sir.
The stand is not close enough.
Oh,
Okay, apparently the stand isn't close enough.
thank
Okay, so I have an introduction for the public comment section to give everybody a bit of a understanding on what public comment is and how it works. So, here we go. School boards are elected to govern their schools. Our meetings are for the board to conduct the required business of the school district. By law, this business is conducted in view of the public. While these meetings are in public, they are not public meetings, as a legislative session is not a public meeting. They are in the public but not intended to be interactive question-answer public meetings. The law requires us to provide a public comment period during our meetings. The public comment period is your opportunity to express your views within the guidelines of our policies. It is not an open discussion period. Accordingly, do not expect the board to respond to your questions or concerns tonight. While a simple question that is raised in the public comment period may be answered at the discretion of the chair, for a more thoughtful and thorough response, we suggest that questions be emailed to the appropriate building administrator first, the superintendent, and then board members if you want to pursue it further. Please keep in mind that a response may take a few days due to the requirements of the day, or to allow time to gather the information requested. I also want to remind everyone that you may submit written questions to the board in lieu of speaking during the public comment period if you choose. In order that we may hear from the largest number of different voices and have time to conduct our regular business, each speaker is limited to 3 minutes for comments. At the outset, after being recognized by the chair, we ask that speakers identify their name and town of residence. Please try to be brief and try not to repeat yourself. Please direct your comments to the board. The board will not permit complaints or allegations against staff members or particular students. These are matters which the board is not permitted to hear in public. If there are complaints against staff or students, these are handled appropriately through established policies and procedures. We know discussions of school-related issues can be emotional, but please remember that our children are watching, we are neighbors, so please be civil. We will not permit profanity or shouting at one another, or comments that disparage or attack individuals or groups of individuals. Thank you for your patience while I make this introduction. I have hope and confidence that your participation will be helpful and constructive to the board. Thank you, and with that, I will open public comments, and if you're interested, you can raise your hand, we'll recognize you, and you can step to the podium. Thank you. Yes, sir, you can go to the podium if you like.
Get my timer going so I don't waste too much of your time here. You probably don't know me other than, probably online, Facebook, What's Happening Winslow page, but my name is Chris Susi. Just a little quick brief background because I'm not going away. I graduated from Waterville in 1994, played on the soccer team, joined the Marine Corps. I had a full boat to Norwich University and turned it down, wanted to serve my country. Got out of the military, tried to find a job. There wasn't a lot of jobs for guys like myself, shooting Stinger missiles and shooting aircraft down. Worked for Oaks and Parkhurst, a couple other places. Ended up joining the Army National Guard, deployed to Iraq 2004. Retired from the Army. I've coached at the Winslow Junior High School soccer. I've had 3 kids in the Winslow school program. I think there's been a lot of animosity towards the decisions with masks and whatnot. It's nice to hear some positive information. So my daughter is currently a senior in college at University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, straight A's. She's continuing on for her master's. She She went here to Winslow. When she first moved to Murfreesboro, which is just south of Nashville, I asked her, what's the school like, being in a high school of 1,200 students? They actually have to pick their degree program in ninth grade down there on where they want to go, what their career path is. She wanted to be a psychologist, and I convinced her to take some business classes. So international business, straight A student, and she said, Dad, I blew all the students away. So Winslow definitely has a fantastic academic program, proved it when she went down to Murfreesboro, when she went down to Nashville, and just blew away her students. My son, Ebenezer, same thing. He's in 8th grade, blowing away his students. My son, Burhan, yes, some struggles, but he's doing well, you know. I adopted those 3 children from Ethiopia. They've all been here in the Winslow school system. I wish they were still here. I think it's a fantastic program. I'm divorced, remarried. My wife is an Alaskan native, and I have a 5-year-old who went to Educare. I'm against the masks, okay? He's got a speech impediment. He has a hard time explaining himself. People don't understand what he's saying. He relies on reading your lips and reading your body language to understand what he's saying. So I understand the safety protocol. I've asked online multiple times. 223 cases don't mean anything. You know, back when we had the flu, nobody asked, like, who went to the hospital? How contagious is it? I understand people are dying. My father was in the hospital for 3 weeks. He wasn't on a ventilator, but he had to have a plasma transfusion. He almost died. COVID is real. And if you read the statistics, it does not affect children. And I'm passionate, over my time, sorry. I'm passionate about the mask mandate. Even when the masks are gone, you're probably gonna see me a lot more. That's really all I have to say. I know you're not talking about masks tonight. I'm sorry, you're over like 30 seconds. I'll try to keep it brief for next time, but that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak? Okay. I don't know if everybody can hear me. Okay. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak? Okay. All right, we will move on. Thank you very much for your comments. Next up, new business. School property dispositions. And we're going.
Thank you. This is a little bit clean, the football equipment closet the other day, probably the first time it's been cleaned in years. And we have a pile of equipment that has no value. We cannot give it away because it hasn't been reconditioned in years. It's not safe enough for our current athletes to use. And with our policy, we cannot dispose of it without your permission. We have old knee pads, thigh pads, probably about 14 pairs of old shoulder pads that have pieces coming off them. And with your permission, they can dispose of them as soon as possible, so we can get them out of the corners of the locker room. There you go.
Has any thought been given to selling them as fundraiser for Memento?
I hadn't really thought of that. I just know that I wouldn't do it because if somebody used it for the purpose I made it for, you'd be liable. I think the best place for those would be in a dumpster.
Okay.
What about costumes? Offering it for costumes or anything like that for the programs?
I can see if they want to keep it internally and ask them, but
I mean, not all of them, but
yeah.
just some.
As you guys know, the challenge we have here is storage.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I can offer them before we throw them.
Any other questions for Jim?
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody need to go? Yes. Okay. Oh, yes, that's fine. Are we on consensus? Are we all on the same page and we're okay with that? All right. I think everybody's good. Okay. Thank you all. So Jim, I guess you're good to go. All right. Next up is first draft of the FY '23 transportation budget.
Hi there, sorry. I want to send out the current bus that we have in on our street, so you can pass that around for me, please. Everybody has a copy? All right, for the other buses that we currently have 11 buses on the road currently and 5 spare. The mileage that I got is current as of last Friday. And those tells you the different size of the buses. 77 seat are normal buses. 66 to 60 are wheelchair buses, so you know the difference. And that's what I have put in the toilets for you to use. And then I just want to talk about a couple lines that I want to point out. If you could look on page 1, line 1. On line 1, you will notice there's an increase of 8,000. That is because we are putting 40 more students, just finally, Central Main Learning Center, and also picking up and dropping off homeless students to school and from school. And if you look on page 1 again, line 6. I have lowered the sub drivers. We should have this year around $20,000. Looking at the history, I felt like we could lower the figure from the $35,000. Page 1 again, line 24. Just want to mention that if we are short on bus drivers, we use motion and polling bus drivers outside doors in case we need for backup. And I have that as in 3,000, and I sorted by 200 because we did not use much this year. And I'm hoping normal year for next year, we should not have to use much. All right, page 2, please. Line.
Actually, if I could ask you a question while you're on that point.
Yeah.
For the purchase transportation, do you anticipate, with increases in athletics or other such things next year, that we might need more of that purchase transportation if we're having more trips than maybe what we've had the last couple of years? Or do you think this is going to be in line with historical? For the purchase transportation, 2024?
Yeah, I didn't use much this year. Because I didn't feel not a lot of, for students, local school transportation. So I'm hoping next year should be normal. So there should be increase of, stuff and backup bus drivers as well.
All right, I just want to make sure we're covered as we get back to normal, so. All right, very good. Thank you.
On page 2, I just want to mention that line 33 to 43 are the lines that are used for a text that rise and class. And lastly, line 44 on page 2. Everything has gone up in price. Repair the maintenance for buses has as well. Here are the some of the damages that charges up to the line. Inspection, and any repair that needed, for example, brake repair, mirror replacement, heater adjustment, oil changes, wiper replacement, transmission replacement, repair of drop-down lights on bus, door repair, wiring repair, frozen tank repair, stress replacement. Even though our repair and maintenance of our newer buses and vans are less, the price of parts and labor have increased the depot maintenance line. And if you look on the last page, it is 0.58%. So overall, my transportation budget is up less than 1%. Any other questions? Yes.
My question, I think, is for Peter. Can we just discuss in a brief summary, what we did with COVID funds towards bus purchase?
Ashley, how many buses? How many buses have we purchased this year, Ashley?
How many?
With COVID funds? So we purchased, I believe, 4.
I was thinking of at least 3.
There's at least 3 that we purchased with COVID funds.
I just wanted to make a note that a good portion of budget money that we normally would be putting out was provided, and I think it was a wise expenditure for the COVID funds, because it helps every student and lowers the need for local funds.
It is. And I think that number that I just gave you is low. I think it's more like 5 or 6 buses, but Ashley can get back to us on that one.
They did over multiple years.
Correct.
That's it.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. It definitely helps support our budget over the longer term.
Right.
As it's come on. Jay?
I think my question also will be for Peter. On line 28, gasoline does not seem like a common item to encumber, because actual miles can vary from what was estimated when the budget was developed. So can you just walk us through what happens if we, are we committed to a certain expense and a certain number of gallons, whether we use them or not, which would seem to be what the encumbrance would suggest? I'm so worried about that.
We are not. We are not expecting that. So if we need more, we can purchase more. If we don't use everything that we use, we don't have to pay for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ashley this time?
I don't know. I know Mr. Price was driving bus quite a bit this year to help out, and has that been addressed, that he won't be available to do that? You know?
Good question.
Well, that depends. Mr. Price might be available.
Oh, maybe, right? Okay. I didn't see a big jump in wages, so I wondered.
See how the cards lie out on the table?
Okay,
I'm looking at the one ad for the job posting.
good.
Did it help like that?
There's a job posting for a vice principal.
We got good candidates lined up for those types of positions.
All right. Any other questions for Ashley? Or on this piece of the budget? This is obviously one of our shorter ones, so it's pretty straightforward. Okay. I think we're good. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
All right. Board and Central Office.
Board and Central Office. So I'm going to pull a Will Backman. Will is our technology director. Will always starts us off with the end in mind for the last line in line. So the bottom line for the board and central office is that it's $17,233.69 less than last year at this point in time. So the first thing that I want to bring to your attention are the first three lines where it says contracted services, lines 1, 2, and 3. You'll see that there's a slight increase in each one of those lines. Those lines have to do, are related or attached to the schools, the elementary school, the junior high school, and the high school. What that is used for is for Kennebec Behavioral Health Services. Each of the schools, and you'll see it in Mr. Bell's budget this evening, each of the schools has money budgeted for additional counseling for Kennebec Behavioral Health. We sometimes run over those contract dollars, so we budget in this cost center to help with that if we should run over. So that's what those three lines are. The other line that I want to bring to your attention is line 4, the wages instructional specialists. You'll see that there was nothing budgeted in 21-22, but we spent, actual expenditures was $9,302.38. You might ask, how is that possible? We had an instructional specialist a few years back, and that was Michelle Lake. When Mary Boyle, our curriculum director, retired, Michelle was then earned that position. However, her contract as an instructional specialist was on a teacher's contract in that it went until September. When she took over the curriculum coordinator's position, that contract began in July. And so what the amount that you see there is a summer accrual with summer pay. Dropping down to line 15, I think that's an important line. You'll see there's and what I'm pointing out are lines that have some significant differences to them. If you have any questions on any of them, please say something, but these are just the ones that are significantly different. Travel conferences, you'll notice that we had budgeted for $2,452, and to date, $261.54 has been spent actual this year. Going back again, Mary Boyle, when she was our curriculum coordinator, as you recall, was the curriculum coordinator for all three districts, Bassboro, Winslow, and Waterville. And so she was often traveling to those districts, either for board meetings, either for regular meetings. And so there was a lot of travel involved in that position. Since Michelle is only working for Winslow, we made a significant cut to that line in travel. So that's why you'll see that was cut from $2,400 to $400. Under the Board of Education, I want to look at bring your attention to line 20. There was $500 budgeted there. We spent $1,066 to date, and that's because we've had some professional development with a few of our board members that they're participating in right now. We also had a board, for those of you who recall, we had a professional development with the board with MSMA as well, where Steve Bailey, the executive director, came and provided us that information because we have some new board members. The next line that I want to bring your attention to is line 24. And on line 24, you'll see that we had budgeted $2,700, but actually it's been spent $12,273 to date. And next year, we're budgeting for $16,500 in that particular line. The reason for that is due to a change that the insurance company has put in place. It's a change to the billing structure. So they're using a different account system, but in the end, it's not going to be more money for us. And let me explain that. If you go back to we actually have to go forward to line 62. And you'll notice that insurance property and operation of plant in line 62 has decreased significantly. So we had budgeted 23,500 for the 3 facilities, the 3 buildings, which is broken up that way. You'll see that we've spent 9,520 to date, and next year you'll see that we're budgeting for 13,000. So essentially what they've done is they've taken different categories and they've lumped them together. We used to be billed in one lump sum. Now they're taking the different categories, lumped them together, so you see an increase. It looks like an increase in one, but it really isn't. It's just a different way that they're billing. So in the end, we end up paying less in this particular model. Next piece I want to bring to your attention, dues and fees, line 26. You see that there's a budgeted amount of $5,913, and you see that the actual is $5,913. Next year, that increases a little bit to $6,000. That amount is because we belong in the Kennebec Alliance Service Center, which consists of RSU 18, us, Waterville, Skowhegan. Because we belong in that Kennebec Alliance Service Center, we provide professional development during the summertime to some of our staff. Because we belong in that alliance and it's a cost-saving measure, on our 279, we receive an additional $64,000. So it's a pretty good price, $5,900. And we received $64,000 back on our 279 because of this in that cost center, which is a fantastic opportunity for us. The next lines I want to bring attention to, line 62, 3 and 4, insurance property. We talked about those just a little bit. The other line that I want to bring to your attention is line 65 on the food service. As you know, in the past few years, our food service has run a little bit in the red. I think that's something that every food service or many food service departments do, because when you have students who sometimes can't pay, you're not going to tell them they can't go without a meal. So in the past, we've always put an amount in there to support food service. Since the pandemic has started, students have eaten for free with the change in the funding, and so we're also getting the reimbursement rates higher. We're getting the summer reimbursement rates. So the food service department right now is doing exceptionally well, and so we felt as though we could cut that back to $30,000 in terms of the additional funds that we support for this food service program next year. Line 66, we have a couple of bonds. The first line is the principal Winslow High School bond. This is the old bond on Winslow High School for the renovations. And you'll see that bond expires in 2026, 2027, so you've got a few more years to pay on that. You see the renovation at the 355 on that first bond. That's the Winslow High School one, the original one. And then if you drop down underneath in the notes, you'll see the 64,225 that accompanies the first bond as well. That's the interest that goes with that. Then you see the same thing with the other bond that we have, the renovation, $405,000. That's the second bond. That's a new addition from the junior high, grade 7 and 8. And the same thing with that second bond with the interest.
Tell us what the interest is on those bonds, would that be okay?
Yep, I can.
Thank you.
The interest on the first bond, that's gonna expire in 26, 27 next year is 64,225.
That's the interest, or does it interest rate? Interest rate or the amount of rent? Rate or the amount of interest?
Both would be nice.
Okay, I don't know if you have a rate.
I don't have the rate.
Rates don't really matter, right?
take the amount.
Yep. So that's on the, first one for the Winslow High School renovation that was done, many years ago. And then the new renovation, the interest on that is $263,250.
Is that through 2023 or
No, that
For the
one,
year.
that one's out for quite some time.
is that amount for the year or?
Yes, it's per year. Yep. Yeah.
Peter, I think that interest is front loaded in all those bonds.
That's
Yes,
a good
it
point.
is.
Balloons built into that.
All you're paying right now is interest.
Great.
All the interest for the total bond, I believe, is all front loaded.
I think you're right, yeah.
The next part is Shelley Phillips with the meetings and custodian.
There's not much to talk about with the central office maintenance repairs. But what I am gonna go through real quick, like, is we talked about, we did a lot of it the last time I was up here, pool. And we have locked in a few prices, and we just did this in the last few days. As we all know, what's happening in the world, we did lock in a price at $297, I believe it was. Like, yeah, $297 a gallon, and that's for next year. So, we just didn't feel like we wanted to take any more chances than what we've already done. So that's what we've locked in. As far as repairs that I really want to point out, is nothing much has changed at central office, except for there's some front walkway repair. If anybody's been to the office recently, you'll notice that we do have some issues in the front walkway. We've got some trip and fall hazard out there that we want to take care of, and I think it needs attention this year. So that's primarily the one thing you're going to see changing at central office. Any questions?
Just on that fuel, just to touch on that just a little bit for the entire district. Last year, we were able to lock in at $1.99 a gallon. This year, it's $2.97. It's a difference of about $48,000 for us, an increase. With the crisis that's happening right now, we didn't dare wait any longer. After having conversations with vendors and people in the business, the issue that we have is that we don't have the luxury to wait until summertime to make these bids. We have to do this now because we have to pass the budget. People who were advising us, saying if we waited longer, the prices are going to very well continue to rise. We didn't want to see $4 or some crazy amount. We couldn't handle that.
Any questions on those from the board? Well, having none there, next up is the Winslow High School budget. Mr. Bell.
All right. I just want to point out a few things as I go through the budget. I don't want to insult you by going too slow, and I also don't want to think that you've got it and go too fast. So if at any point there's any questions, please holler to tell me to slow down, ask specific questions if it reaches. I do want to point out a couple of things that when in building this budget this year, we focus on a couple things as our priority, and they related directly to our work with NEASC and the goals that we set for our school. Number one, we wanted to support the work with student engagement and achievement. We did this through professional development and instructional activities, and I'll point those out as I go through the budget for you. The other thing we wanted to continue to do was to support data collection
to assist the school in evaluating student achievement and instructional needs as well. And again, I'll point those out as well. I don't just like to focus on the things that have increases, although I will do that. I also like to point out where we save some money by cutting some things out from previous budgets as well. I know we do have some new board members, so I'm not sure if you have questions about how the budget sheets are developed, how they look. If you have any questions there, I just want to take a minute to answer those questions for you, if there were any questions there. Great. The last thing I want to point out, as we go through, you're going to see that we're budgeting for some things, but we haven't spent the money this year. In many of those cases, like professional development, it's because those opportunities weren't available due to COVID. And we know that's not going to go away. If anything, there may be an increase for that. So you may notice some of those lines is like, hey, you're asking for $600, you didn't spend the $600 this year. That a lot of times is why, and I'll explain that as I go through. So looking at page 1, and the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to list out the page number and what line I'm on. If you have any questions, or if I skipped over something you might have had a question, again, at any time, please stop me, and I want to get those answered. Right in line number 1, you're going to notice that salary teacher is actually down. And you're going to probably think, well, this is a negotiation year, shouldn't that be increasing? Actually, last summer, we had a resignation within one of our departments. And anytime we get a resignation, no matter what time of year, we always go back to the schedule and say, okay, can we do without this position? Is there a way we could restructure the current school calendar, shuffle the kids around, and can we do without that position? We've had a declining enrollment for the last several years, so we want to be fiscally responsible and say, okay, are we keeping extra staff that we don't really need? Is now a good time where we can maybe shuffle a few things around? So last summer, we were able to actually cut a position. So we carried that position this year, unfilled, so we didn't need to put the money in for next year's budget. So that's why you're going to see, even though there's been that anticipated increase in salaries, that line hasn't gone up for the high school. Line number 4, if you look at stipend, there's been a couple added stipends. One is a Title IX coordinator and one's an affirmative action officer. Both of those were shared positions when we were in AOS. Now that has pretty much completely dissolved, we needed to hire somebody for our own district. So that's the high school's portion of that increase, is why that's up a little over $1,000, $1,500. Line 23, contracted services. You're going to see an increase of about $7,000. And the main reason for that is for that iReady assessment that we started to do this year, actually K through 11 we started in this year, to look at our math results and to enable us to look at student achievement and instructional practices as well. If you skip to page 2. Yes, go ahead.
Can you just review, because I think I recall the Ready Sub, isn't that the program that, or the software / is that what I'm thinking?
Yep, that's the program that calls our subs for us. The staff can put in, the subs can actually check it on their phone, they can be on it, they can get alerts when there's a job open. Yeah, that's what Ready
Okay,
Sub
I
is.
just wanted to review that, it was a short time when it was there.
Any other questions on page 1? Seeing none. Line 24 is staff development. That's just a miscellaneous staff development. I always like to carry $500 just in case if something comes up that can help a teacher with student engagement or with student achievement, and I can say, okay, I have money there. Things come up that weren't planned for in a budget. And so you'll see there's nothing been spent there this year, but that's typically about what we carry and spend for that. Going all the way down to line 34, you're going to see an increase on technology, software, art. As you know, digital art was new this year, or I don't know if you have a question, I'll come right back to you. Okay. And if I forget, apologize. Digital art was new this year. We're anticipating hiring a new person for that next year. and as the person was leaving, they built their budget and said that the course really needs this Adobe Creative Cloud. It's a program that was really used within digital art. It comes with a price tag of about $2,600, and so that's that increase there for that. Earl.
Line 26, tuition to public sources. Nothing used this year, but still budgeting 5,000 for next year.
Correct. Peter, I'm gonna defer to you in case I misspeak on this, so you can either say I'm right or wrong. That's with the teen parent program. Am I right? Okay, thank you. So we didn't have any students there, but we always carry money every year in case we do have somebody. I don't believe $5,000 is enough to cover one, but it's kind of like a little bit of an insurance policy to help if we have somebody go in and rather than have to come up with $10,000, we have to come up with $5,000. How did I do on that, Amanda? Peter? Almost like I know what I'm talking about. Okay, moving on to page number 3. Again, don't want to go too quick, but there's a lot of these that don't need a whole lot of explanation. Supplies, CAD, there's been a decrease of $300. The main reason there was last year we budgeted for a new 3D printer, the one that we had for, I'm gonna guess, at least 8 years, broke, needed to replace it. So we budgeted $700 for that. We're budgeting $400 for supplies for that, to keep that going in classes. Line number 37, staff development English. You're going to start seeing this in some of the departments as we go through. Coming out of COVID, there's a desire for the staff. There's been lots of changes to things that have been going on in the classroom with a lot of different technology things that have been put in back from when we were originally shut down with COVID to last year when we were remote. There's things that teachers have found that have really increased their ability to engage students in the classroom. They want to keep using that. So you're going to see that in the technology line. Well, the other thing that it's done is spark an increase in their desire to change practices a little bit, find ways to find different hooks to bring kids in. So there's more of a desire for professional development than there has been in my 9 years being here. It's been really good. So you're going to see an increase in some of those lines as well. Starting in English, it increased to $525. Even though money wasn't spent in 2022 because of COVID and there really wasn't a lot of things for staff to go to, they asked to increase for 3 teachers to go to the main English language arts teachers conference in the state of Maine. Again, this also supports our student engagement goals that we've developed over the past few years as part of on NEAS as well. Line 38, you're going to see a decrease in textbooks in English. And it's not that they're not reading textbooks. We have a good amount of English books in our library that the English department has. There's class sets of a lot of the classical things that teachers teach. Also, they're finding more things online through some of the technology stuff that they've been working on to kind of be able to decrease that. So we were able to reduce that by almost $3,000, which is great. Going to line 39, equipment increase. We're starting to notice that some of our desks in our building that have not been replaced in, I didn't want to give a number of the last time we bought desks. I know I've been here 9 years. We haven't bought desks since then, and there's some that are beyond repair. Shelley and her guys do a great job repairing those every summer, but still, they've been welded and welded and welded and welded, and we really have to start thinking into the future. Like we need, a 5-10-year plan to start replacing desks. What Shelley and I talked about was splitting the cost to try to get 2 classrooms replaced, one in the English department, one in the social studies department, to start working on replacing those desks. We're all getting bigger, right? The combo desk and chair just doesn't work for a lot of kids. They're not very comfortable. So trying to separate out a desk and a chair combo and start to move in that direction. Again, a little bit at a time. So there's $2,500 put in for that class, and you'll see it later on in the social studies department, another $2,500. Line 40, technology software in English. Again, this is where you're going to see every department has this built in based on the technology that they brought into their classroom, whether it be Candy or Edpuzzle or Pear Deck. There's lots of different things going on around the building. We want to still support our kids and our teachers with those software first. Line 43 on page 3, equipment, world languages. It went up $264, which is a pretty small amount, but it's for 12 whiteboard sets to allow the teachers to work with the kids and know where they're at in their learning automatically. That goes right back to a lot of the work we've done with Marzano and work that I've done with teachers where I want teachers to know where every student is in their learning throughout the period. So with the whiteboard, kids can write answers, show it to the teacher. The teacher can quickly scan the room and assess where the students are at with their learning. Good stuff. Page 4, line 44, dues and fees, world language. Again, this is one of those where there's $190. Same thing was budgeted this year because the teachers didn't go to that plain conference for foreign language teachers across the state of Maine. Line 45, staff development. Again, another one where we're increasing to try to get more teachers to the state math conference that is held every single year. Line 47, equipment math. We're actually decreasing this back a little bit by about $500. And what the math department needs is calculators and document cameras. Line 48, again, technology, software, math. That is right in line with the other department, and to bring in that software that helps with increasing student engagement. Line 52, textbooks, general music. You're going to see an increase of about $250 here, and it's booked for the new course, the Intro to Piano course that's going to be offered next year. Line 53, equipment, general music. You're going to see a decrease of about $2,400. And that's just simply the teachers requested, their request came in less. The big purchase this past year was mics and sound equipment in the auditorium. So again, we're not just going to budget for things just because we budgeted that amount last year. We're going to be, what are our needs? Page 5, a lot of that is instruction instrument, and you're going to see that those numbers have all decreased quite a bit. And this is a line that's always tough to anticipate the need. What instruments are going to be needed to be fixed? How many students are going to go to KG and get accepted? Those are always tough to predict every year. So what I like to do is look at a 5-year average. And again, with COVID, you got to kind of take this COVID years out and say, what is a realistic number to put in there so we're not over budgeting? And so that's where we came up with those lower numbers, just tighter budgeting, trying to do it.
Our numbers, like athletics numbers, have been slowly going down for different teams. How is the band course, other things like drama, are those numbers about the same, or?
I think they're about the same. I think they're holding pretty strong. And actually, when we talk about KV chorus, our numbers went through the roof this year, which was awesome. Absolutely awesome. So I'm sure there's some kids who stop, but also with band and chorus, sometimes in high school, as they get older and older, they start looking at different courses, and so some kids stop taking band. So it's kind of hard to predict.
Tend to have more scheduling conflicts.
Schedule, well, I never have been one to say that schedule is the reason why kids don't get what they want.
Right.
Because when we build the schedule, usually band is one of those, the singletons are, when you have only one course, you always put those up first. Because you never want a kid to have to decide freshman English or band, right? Like band should be there first so they can get their other things that there's multiple of later on. Doesn't always work out that way, but that's pretty much how we try to build the schedule. Line 67 on page 6, actually I just talked about this, with the increase of about $730 for dues and fees local, and that's because more students got into KP this year than in years past, which is phenomenal. Line 71, dues and fees phys ed. There was an increase in that line to try to get 3 teachers to go to the MAPER conference, which is for, it says math and PE, forget that, it's not math and PE, that was a typo, health and PE conference. And again, that supports student engagement goals. Line 73, supply science, that decreased by $1,000. And that's just, again, kind of like with Dan, tighter budgeting, looking at a 5-year average, what's been spent. We don't need to budget the same exact every year if we're not spending as much as we did the previous. So we were able to reduce that request by $1,000. Technology, software, science, again, that's an increase based off the same technology needs that we talked about in those other departments. And again, that supports student engagement goals. Line 73, nope, I already went past that. Page 7 now. Line 79. Textbook social studies. You're going to see an increase of $600. The reason for that increase is that as part of this student engagement work, we have a social studies teacher that found this upfront online subscription to engage students in conversations about social studies. And so that $600 went into the textbook line because it's more of an online textbook line, if you will.
Do we know what that is? Or is that part of the curriculum?
It's part of the curriculum.
So how do we find out what that was?
I guess Google, if you wanted to look, or if you want to email me, I can find out information for you and get that to you. Absolutely. Next line 80, equipment, social studies. Again, that's the same thing I talked about, the English department with the classroom desk increased $2,500. Line 81, again, it's that technology line. I'm not going to bore you with that, same thing. Line 83, textbook wellness. You're going to see a decrease of $650. We bought new health books last year for those of you that were on the board and remember that. Now all she needs is to update the CPR materials. Those are a lot less expensive than what we budgeted last year. Line 85, travel field trips. You're going to see a total of $3,000. Money has not been spent yet in fiscal year 21-22. So every year, for those of you who've been on board for a while, every year in November, we do our Futures Day, where we take every student out of the school, every teacher out of the school. We go either on a college campus, university campus, military. We go to some job sites to do like a Futures Day. Like what is available after high school? What are some good training opportunities? And unfortunately, because of COVID, we didn't do it in November. However, we are planning that for in November, we did it with just our seniors to make sure that they had an experience before they finalized their plans. We are now planning something in April for the rest of the school to make sure that we are back providing these opportunities to our students that have missed out on this the last year and a half, almost 2 years. So that money's still in there. Page 8, contracted services summer school. You're going to see an increase of $2,000. This is something we always budgeted $1,500 for. Forever, well, I don't want to say forever. Forever is a long time. For this summer, we're budgeting $2,000 based on an increased need for some of our underclassmen that didn't have this opportunity last summer. With some of our seniors and even some of our juniors, through using courseware and Ingenuity, we're able to do some credit recovery stuff throughout this year, but we've got to get back to what we used to do and offer some sort of traditional summer school. Not exactly sure what that's going to look like, but this will, whether there's something regional, whether we do something on our own, but this gets us back to where we were pre-COVID. Gifted and talented, you'll notice that money has been taken away. And that's not because gifted and talented has gone away at the high school. The past few years, we tried to add some money to do some special trips for students that were identified in gifted and talented, but no trips have been taken. And that's not just COVID, that's, trying to align the teacher's schedule with the students. The students like, hey, I'm in high school now, I don't really want this pull-out thing. So trying to do more of a consultation model We offer a lot of things for students of all abilities at the high school anyway, whether it be AP courses, whether it's dual enrollment courses, or even getting students on college campuses to take classes there. So, don't want to keep putting money into something if it's not going to be utilized, so just trying to be more fiscally responsible. And if something comes up, I think we're pretty good at trying to find different resources, whether it be grants, whether it be different ways to pay for things if something does come up. So, page 2, any questions up to page 9? Because we're going to skip to the back of this here in about 2 seconds. All right. So go ahead and skip to page 21. Jim's going to come up here and talk about pages 10 to 21 after I'm all set and done. If you go to page 21, and it starts with the guidance department. There's a few things that I think are going to raise some eyebrows with some salaries, and I just want to point those out because we've had some changes in staffing in the guidance office as well as my own office. And so if you look at line 267, wages secretary academics, you're going to see an increase of about $10,000. That's for 2 reasons. One is, I think it's already been explained about the renegotiation year and how the secretary contract's going to work, and some different monies are being pumped into that to get our secretary contracts up to more what regional secretaries make. So that's one. The other one is, anytime we hire somebody, we're always going to hire somebody with the best experience that can do the best job for our school and our students. And so we recently hired somebody in this position that fit that. They just came with a lot of experience. They just are making a little bit more money than the previous person. So that's the reason for that increase. If you look at line 269, there's a stipend for scanning of old files. Again, we budgeted for 600 last year, haven't spent any money. We're budgeting for 500 this year. The reason why the money hasn't been spent is it's something that we usually hire somebody during breaks. February break, April break, or at the beginning of summer to try to get that work done. The person who we usually use for a lot of reasons last week didn't want to work last week and work. They wanted their vacation. So we didn't use any of that money last week. So we anticipate using some before the end of the year. And for next year, we budgeted for about 40 hours of work to get that done. And what that is scanning old files. It's stuff from the files that have been in that filing cabinet since the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Yours. We're not going to lose those. So what we're trying to do is, they're in a filing cabinet, and when you graduated high school, it went in that filing cabinet, and nobody ever looked at it again until you leave it. Well, we're trying to get them digitized so they're backed up somewhere, secure, so if fire did go through, God forbid, you don't lose your files. So, but as you can imagine, there's a lot of records, and that takes a lot of time. The good news is, as kids graduate now, that's all stuff's done digitally and has been for the last several years. So we don't have to keep doing it, but we have to get rid of those older files. You go to page 23. Staff development, again, one of those things that the media center would like to go to some local conferences. There's a lot of local things going on, and we'd like to get into those to see what they can bring new to our school and help out. So there's actually 2 lines associated with that, line 305 and line 306 with travel, and you're going to see an increase there. Line 308, supplies non-instructional, you're going to see an increase of about $500. And what they're trying to do is, over the last several years since Mrs. Murray has been in the library, they've tried to change the feel of the media center to a learning commons type atmosphere. There's been some equipment put in there in the past several years. There's been some furniture put in to just change the feel, to be more modern. Again, it's one of those things you can't do all at once because you can't afford it, so you do a little bit every year. So what she's asked for was for an area run, but even more important that they're trying to get a book club going after school. And so buying groups of books for students to have, use, have conversations about as well is what increases. Page 24, line 310, periodicals, you're gonna see an increase of about $330. And that's just increased costs. Everything's going up, right? Our local periodicals, our newspapers, those are going up. Newspapers are going up. And also, she's trying to be in tune with what the students want and ask questions and get things that they're gonna be really interested in reading, and to update that as well. There's several other media center lines where money was either not requested or there was a reduced need. And I didn't feel the need to go through all of those, but if you look through, you can see there's a lot that are either zeroed out or significantly reduced. Line 317, you're gonna see the wages for the assistant principal went down quite significantly. That's not because I'm trying to surprise Mr. Krell and say his salary's been reduced. If you go back and look at the junior high assistant principal, you're gonna see that more of that cost sharing because he is shared 7 through 12. So just more sharing between the two. Line 318, wages secretary academic, as well as line 319, wages secretary full-time. Again, there's two reasons for that. One is one of those positions, we did hire somebody, again, came in with more experience, therefore gets paid a little bit more. And then also that anticipated salary increase that was put in for both secretaries. And finally, we get to page 25, line 340, staff development for the principal line, and that staff development of an increase of about $650. And that increase is due to diversity, equity, and inclusion workshops that we're doing this year, and anticipated doing that again next year as well. Line 349, miscellaneous graduation expenses. We're anticipating more need for more funds for graduation, even though we haven't spent all of our funds this year, because we're now in those planning phases. But now that we're trying to have graduation in Winslow, on the football field, doing our own thing, it comes with a few more added costs than just backing up and going over to Colby and having graduation. So, in trying to do something unique for our own community and our students, it does cost a little bit of money. We also lost a partner that was a good business partner that rented us chairs very, very inexpensively. We're currently trying to find a new vendor, and we're anticipating that's probably going to be. Yeah. Any questions? Oh, we slipped. So that's...
Okay. Okay. Jim, we have next on the athletics?
Again, doing this budget this year was, again, very difficult because we haven't had 3-year averages. We were going on 2 years without having a normal athletic season. Basically, we haven't really played a full schedule in any sport, except for this year basketball. Even that, we missed a couple of games. I'll just go down a couple lines that I see that are really important or have changes. At any time, feel free to ask me questions. The first line I actually looked at is line 114. It's contracted services. Right now, we share costs with volleyball and hockey. That number could easily come down quite a bit. We are going to look for a third partner, like a co-op. Right now, we had a really difficult season. We didn't have enough players for a long time due to COVID, injuries. So we finally realized we need a third partner. So that cost could go down even a third, depending on how that goes. That's what we're looking to do there. The next line I'd like to look at would be line 137. When we lost the junior high school, we lost the ability to use the bathrooms at the junior high school. We lost the locker rooms. We lost the ability to get water out of the building. So we budgeted $900 for porta potties. And that's obviously an increase in number, something we never paid before. Soccer, full soccer is pretty much the same. Boys basketball is scheduled to get uniforms next year. They're on their, we do this on a 5 to 6 year cycle. They're coming on their 6th year, so they're going to get uniforms next year along with cross country. Those are 2 sports that are going to come up next year. So that's an added expense that we're looking at from that. Other sharing, it's time to forecast the cost of music rights and choreography. This year, we kind of missed it in the good way by about $600. And we'll bring that down a little bit, but I always get kind of nervous about that because copyright of music is expensive along with the choreographer, so we'll kind of leave that the same. The next slide I'd like to look at would be girls ice hockey. When you see $12,500 budgeted, well, actually $12,750 budgeted for ice time, that seems like a lot of money, and it is. But this year we'll recover $16,289.29 from our partners. And basically what came out of this year, we did it per cost, per student with each school. And so we had 7 students, and those 13 on our costs, we recovered about $16,289.26. So although that $12,750 is a lot, we will add probably next year closer to $20,000 to the revenue line. We'll remain the managing partner, so we do have to carry that on our budget. Obviously, it would be easier if somebody else is managing partner, we could just write a check, we wouldn't have to get involved with all this other stuff. But it is a fair way to share costs. It helps us with everything, from transportation, the coaching stipends, all the equipment. So it works out to be a good deal for us and a good deal for our student athletes. Other than that, this is pretty basic. I tell you that our trainer is probably the best money we spend. She works with both our junior high and high school students. She doesn't only work with athletes, she works with students. Somebody might sprain an ankle in the gym or hit their head, whatever. She works with all kinds of students. So what we spend on that is well spent money. Every day at 2:15, there's a line out her door. So I always think that's probably the best money we spend. We have students who can't get to a doctor, so they can see Sarah, our nurse. And if they have some rehabilitation, let me know, to see a PTA or PT, they can work with our trainer. So overall, this budget's going to be up about 2.5%. I think there is going to be some recovery in this budget because, again, we're always going to look for co-op partners. And unfortunately, our school population going down, I worry about losing sports or at least having to co-op our sports. This year, I'm kind of concerned about boys lacrosse. I put the sign-up sheet out today. So far, 1 student, we graduated about 11 last year. So if we find out this week that there's not going to be enough for our team, the next step will be to explore co-ops so we can make sure we have these kids participating. That's John.
2 questions. I know the numbers in tennis have been low. Has there been any talk of co-oping, or maybe you already have?
The problem with co-oping is our neighbor across the river, they have a very popular program. So to get a successful co-op, you need to partner with the same situation you are. And that's what we had no luck with tennis. Miscellaneous started their own program. We used to have the Miscellaneous kids come over us. So we're not going to have a boys tennis program this year because we did silence already. We had to commit to a schedule. We only had 1 young man who did it. So I'll look for him to play at Waterloo as an independent. But that's kind of the situation where we lost sports right now.
And so have they ever, a sport like tennis is inherently made to use doubles. Is there any mixed things that they could have to do as a still getting to play tennis, but maybe not as competitive, more.
Well, we do the young man who wants to play tennis is we have to go over there and play exhibition matches. He can't compete in the high school. It's not a pure co-op, but he can compete at the singles level, at the state championship level at the end of the year. So he'd be able to get matches in as an exhibition, and at the end of the year, if you choose to participate in an individual state championship, that'd be available to him. And that's what we're trying to do for athletes who are looking for opportunities that we may not offer. We'll always look around for another school to help them out with that.
Thank you.
Again, we're up about 2.5%, but I think there is there's some recovery in that budget.
Any questions for Jim?
How are the numbers in the fall, in the winter sports? Were they
We're down about 7% somewhere there.
overall?
Yeah, that was statewide. I think statewide you've seen it. I'm hoping that things will change in the next 3 or 4 months and we'll get back to normal.
Okay. Yeah, shall we go on maintenance for the high school?
ready to follow up? In the first part of the budget, we're going to start on page 26. And I'm going to start on line 354. Some of you may remember the last time I was up here, the last meeting, we talked about the propane. And I want to just touch on this real quick again, because I had mentioned that the consumption at the high school level had gone up. And part of that was because of the additional propane for the additional students in the building. And another piece of that also is the units that were installed on this cafeteria and in the band room are also run by propane. So that's also driving the consumption of that up. So you'll see this year compared to last year, we're using a lot more propane than we've ever used before in the high school. And that's the reason why. Fuel oil, again, we logged in at $2.97 a gallon on line 355. Then if you look at page 28, line 383, that's the repairs and maintenance of the building. The thing I'm requesting this year that I would like to do is to continue with the vinyl floor installation in the hallways. It was so successful last year, and it really, right in the hallways, I think people felt good about it, it lightened the areas, and I'd like to continue in the hallways around that academic wing, to continue to brighten those areas up. Another piece that I'm going to look at this year is I'm also going to do some additional painting in classrooms and hallways. It's time for a little fresh up in all other areas. Line 386 on page 28. You'll see there's, you all set?
I have a question.
Yes.
Just the HVAC, $30,032.
Okay. HVAC is heating, ventilation, and air conditioning.
Yep.
And that's $30,032? Is that what you're questioning?
Right.
It's a full comprehensive maintenance contract that we hold with Siemens.
Okay, so that's an annual,
That's an annual cost.
not a special additional, okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Perfect. So then if you look at 387, that's where I worked with Chad and we talked about trying to purchase equipment, which is the desks and chairs for the classrooms. And I was here back in 2006 when we did the renovation back then. And at that time, we did a lot of value engineering, which included a lot of furnishings that got cut from the project. And that was one of the big costs that we cut from that project. And we did not buy a lot of furniture back then. And we have not bought a lot of furniture. Prior to that, 2006, because I've really kind of been here too long, but prior to that, we used to, like every other year, we would buy a classroom of furniture. And we had like a schedule that we would, a rotation, so that we could keep good furnishings in the building. And we have not done that for a very, very long time. It just seems so other things have been more important, and we've just kind of pushed it to the wayside. Yes, John?
Could you speak, we did the same thing with the junior high, right? When we rebuilt the new junior high, we brought a lot of the classroom furniture over.
Yes, we
so
did.
A
Yes,
lot
we
of
did.
extra money was spent on that as well.
A lot of value engineering went into that too. Yes, yes. So I've also, requesting money for additional classroom furnishings. You'll see on line 389, I've requested some additional monies there because we're going to continue to work on the bleachers on the football field so that we can keep them in compliance. And we're going to add some additional hard fencing. Right now we have snow fencing up there, so we're going to put up some hard fencing for safety, and we're going to do some repainting of the front canopy here at the high school. So there's really not a lot that I've got planned for this coming year. We're just kind of catching our breath and continue to catch up for the last couple of years because we have been so busy. But that's what I asked for the coming year. Are there any questions? Thank you.
All right, I think that was everything we had for budget. Is there any further questions from the board on any budget items before we move on to the agenda? Okay. So obviously we'll see as we get along with the budget, as the total comes together and we'll see where edits need to happen as the total gets to the bottom line. You can see, we still have more budget work to do. So, other business is next, so we'll talk about that. So we're looking to schedule a special meeting for next Monday, the 7th. We'll continue with our budget presentations. We'd like to do that, because that works for the members of the board. You want to do the same time as we did tonight? Seems to be the consensus. Okay, so next Monday at 5:30. And we'll keep going. Get through this and get it to the council because I know they want it.
All the time you want.
Yeah. We usually don't get that sort of suggestion.
All the time you take it. I'd rather have you been straight than not have you.
Oh, all right. I see how that works. All right. Well, we'll get you a budget. We're still working on it. So Monday the 7th at 5:30 is when we'll do a special meeting. So I think that covers everything we had on our regular agenda up until we have an executive session on here. So do we have a motion to go into executive session to 1 MRSA, paragraph 405-6A, compensation for officials, appointees, and employees? Do I have a motion for executive session?
So moved.
We have a motion by Earl. Do we have a second? We have a second. All in favor of the executive session? Okay. So now that we are going into executive session, we need to ask anybody who's not involved in this executive session. I think we all know who is and who isn't. We have to ask you to leave, and thank you for coming.